Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode review and breakdown for Stargirl Season 2. Today we're talking about Episode 4, aka Summer School, Chapter 4. And one thing I do have to say is that this definitely is probably the weakest episode of the season so far. Because, I still enjoyed it. I still had a lot of fun with it. I love seeing the return of Sportsmaster and Tigress. That was really great to see. But I just feel like not much happened. Like, stuff happened, but also, like, with the return of those characters, it felt like they were building up to something big, and then it didn't really go anywhere. So I was a little disappointed by that. But today we're going to be talking about all the big Sportsmaster and Tigress return details and moments and stuff like that, along with everything else that happened in this episode. So of course, spoiler warning if you've not yet seen Stargirl Season 2, Episode 4, because we are diving in deep here. And without further ado, let's jump into this. So, like I said, this episode features the return of Sportsmaster and Tigress, of course, ISA members from the first season. They were a couple of the few members to actually survive the season. So they come back in this episode, and speaking of them, their daughter, of course, Artemis Crock, is really, I'd say, probably the star of this episode, because we start off this episode with Artemis visiting her parents in prison. And at this point in time, she still has no idea what's going on. She still thinks that her parents were framed. She has no idea that her parents were part of the ISA and all that stuff. So her life is not going great because, again, her parents are in prison. She thinks they were framed and they're in there for no reason. And now she's stuck in this crazy foster family, which, by the way, her mother is a terrible I mean, that woman should not be doing this whole fostering thing because she is not good at it. Like, clearly she does not care about children at all. She cares more about her nails. But anyway, to summarize, Artemis, her life sucks at the moment, and that is a big thing exploding her on this journey in this episode here today. But also we have Cindy, and the last time we saw her was in episode 2, where it was actually the ending of the episode where she/Eclipso murdered her stepmother, and she's actually still upset about that because, of course, that was not her doing. She didn't do that on purpose. It was Eclipso taking over her body and feeding on the darkness of Bobby Berman. So now we catch back up with her in this episode in the ISA HQ, and again, she is still basically mourning the loss of her stepmother, and she actually ends up getting visions of her birth mother, who, as was mentioned not only in this season, but also the first season, it's at least implied that she is responsible for the death of her birth mom. And I'm assuming that has something to do with her powers, like at a young age, of course, being a child, not being able to control them. Possibly she accidentally killed her mother. That's what I think it is. I don't remember for sure if they explicitly said that, but she is basically responsible for the death of her mom. So of course, when she starts seeing visions of her mom, that's not good. She gets scared and stuff. And this is, of course, Eclipso using his powers once again to manipulate his victims, / mastery as he calls her, even though really, we all know Eclipso is the puppet master in this situation, and he basically does this to motivate her to stick towards this plan of Injustice Unlimited, which is, of course, Cindy is trying to form the basically ISA juniors with the children of the Injustice Society of America members, which is a big thing I'm really excited to see in the season, and a big thing featured in this episode. And we actually get this great portrait of what the ISA Infinite could look like, and it looks awesome. I mean, it's like you got Shiv, you got Isaac there, you got Cameron, and also what I think is Artemis actually in a Sportsmaster looking outfit. That honestly looks really awesome, and I hope we get to see her wear that in this season. But after this, of course, as I mentioned, Cindy goes off on this journey recruiting the members of the Injustice Infinite, Injustice Unlimited, and she goes and confronts Isaac Bowen at school, and later actually takes him down to the ISA HQ, not only tells him about his mother and his father being the fiddler and being a part of the ISA, but she actually whips out the fiddle, and he's like, I don't know how to play that, because as we saw in the first season, he was playing, I think, the tuba, so he doesn't know how to play the fiddle, but she's like, you'll learn, because now he is going to be the new fiddler for this new version of the Injustice Society. Meanwhile, Courtney and the JSA are investigating both Eclipso and the Black Diamond because, of course, how the episode ended last week with Chuck saying that, like, Eclipso is here and they're all in danger and all this stuff. So they're investigating to find out more about who Eclipso is, where this Black Diamond came from, and all that stuff. And Courtney actually specifically goes to this library to do some specific research on Bruce Gordon, who was the archaeologist who found the Black Diamond originally on this crazy island that no longer exists on the map. And when she does get to the library, we get this really interesting scene because, of course, she runs into the Shade. And the Shade actually tells her his real plan. He's not the real villain here. I love his line here, how he says, you don't know the difference between bad and evil. Because he's definitely done some bad things in the past, but he's not actually evil. Because the whole reason that he wants to get his hands on the Black Diamond is so that he can literally just throw it in the ocean and make sure that nobody else can cause any more trouble with this thing. Because it is a truly evil entity, and he doesn't want that existing in this world. But now, catching up with Sportsmaster and Tigress, aka Crusher and Paula, turns out they have now broken out of prison, and they, of course, find Mike, because that was something towards the end of last season where Mike actually used a drill on Crusher. That was a pretty cool scene. I love seeing that. So, of course, they're coming back for revenge, and they actually use him as leverage to get Pat's help, because literally all they want to do, they don't want to break out of prison so that they can go do some more villain stuff. They just want to go see their daughter's tryout. And that is exactly what happens here. We have some nice scenes where they actually go to the Whitmore residence, and we get some cool bonding moments between Barbara and Paula and Crusher and Pat. So that was nice to see. But then they do eventually go to Artemis's tryouts for football, and this is where things get interesting, like really interesting, because when it starts off, Artemis is really not doing good because, again, she is not at a great point in her life right now. She thinks her parents are in prison, and she's just all up in her head. So she's not doing very good during these tryouts, but then all of a sudden she sees that her parents are there. She gets that motivation, and she completely rocks this tryout. She does amazing until Cindy shows up, and she's like, oh no, that's one of my recruits. I need to do something. So yeah, she uses the Black Diamond to control Artemis and basically motivate her into then going ahead and attacking Courtney, who was just walking onto the field there around the bleachers. And yeah, so Artemis attacks Courtney because she, in her mind, because of what Eclipso is doing with his manipulation powers, the way she sees it, it's a bunch of SWAT members trying to take down her parents. So of course she goes to the rescue and she's like, they're innocent and everything. But that's not the case, because then turns out that, yeah, that was just Eclipso. So now obviously that looked super awkward to everybody. It's like, why are you beating up Courtney? So after tryouts get over, this is when Paula and Crusher decide to officially come clean to their daughter and say, like, yeah, we're not innocent, we're actually supervillains, we're Sportsmaster and Tigress and all this stuff. She's like, oh, why didn't you tell me? Well, we were trying to protect you, and, you know, all that cliche stuff. And they say, like, we don't want to get in the, like, you're a great athlete, you're going to be a great athlete, and we don't want to get in the way of that, so this is goodbye. And they basically say goodbye, and, you know, we don't actually see it, but we assume that they're going back to prison, which is really interesting because we know that at some point they're getting back out of prison, because some news we actually just got a couple days ago is that Neil Hopkins and Joy Osmanski, who play both characters, Sportsmaster and Tigress, have been promoted to series regulars on Stargirl Season 3. So not only are they coming back next season, but they're going to be series regulars. And I did a whole video talking about this the other day, and I'm still wondering how they're going to do it. Like, are they going to be like main villains? I doubt it, because the way it was set up in this episode, they're more not necessarily reformed, but they're not as bad as we thought they were. And again, you did kind of build up a bit of a bond between them and Pat and Barbara. So it seems like they're actually going to be coming back and become allies in season 3 of Stargirl, which I think is going to be really awesome. And I really love those characters, especially if we see that now their daughter goes and turns to the dark side, and then they have to battle their daughter, because that is the next scene here in the episode where we see Artemis actually does get cut from the team, because sure, she did great during tryouts, but because of her aggression, and she's just too angry and too rough, that she gets cut from the team. But when you're cut from one team, Cindy shows up and proposes, hey, you can come join my team, which of course is Injustice Unlimited. So already, Cindy has 2 team members right here. She's got herself, plus now both Isaac Bowen, the new fiddler, and also now Artemis Crock, who will become, I guess, the new Sportsmaster based off her outfits, or possibly the new Tigress, or a mixture of both. So that's something I'm really excited to see. And now that means the only other members left that she needs to recruit are both Cameron Ma-Kent, who in the comics is Ice School Jr. We got hints of that last season that he does indeed have powers. And then also Mike, which is still something I'm super interested to find out about. Like, how is that going to work? Like, why is he even a target? And is he actually going to become a villain in the season? That's really interesting, and I'm really excited to see how that ends up going in this season, because he's not at a great point in his life right now, as we've seen after losing the Thunderbolt pen and all that stuff. So I suppose he is vulnerable to becoming a villain, and again, I'm really excited to see how that's going to go. But as we end off the episode, we have a conversation between Pat and Barbara where they decide they cannot tell Courtney about some of this stuff going on with the Black Diamond so that they can protect her. But of course, Courtney overhears all this and she's like, all right, I'm going to suit up as Stargirl, fly off, and go talk to the Shade, who will actually give me some answers on what is really going on here. So that's going to be pretty crazy to see in the next episode. But also, the final scene is where we get a scene between Beth and Chuck. Kind of Chuck, because Chuck comes back online, but turns out this is not Chuck. This is Dr. Charles McNider, aka Dr. Mid-Nite, and this is the big reveal here that actually Dr. Mid-Nite never died. The Shade did not kill Dr. Mid-Nite in that beginning part from this series where the ISA killed all of the JSA members. Dr. Mid-Nite did not die. Turns out the Shade actually trapped him in this crazy shadow realm. I'm not sure if that's something within the goggles because his voice was coming out of the goggles, or if that's going to be something else. But this is going to be awesome, and not at all was something I was expecting, because I remember seeing a report, like, back when season 1 was airing, that in season 2, the actor who does the voice for Chuck would be coming in and playing the character, like, on screen, and I was really interested to see how that went, and I actually forgot about that until now, but now we see exactly how that's going to go, because he is indeed alive, and that's going to be really, really cool to see going forward in this season. But for now, guys, that is the end of Stargirl Season 2, Episode 4. Loving it. Again, probably the weakest episode of the season so far, but still another solid episode of Stargirl Season 2. Of course, excited to see what else comes in the future this season. But guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think about this episode? All your thoughts, theories, and predictions for the rest of Season 2. And thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and hit the subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything that goes on in the DC life.